You guys through your third essay. And this essay, we're going to switch gears and do something different than what we've done in the first two. So, what you're going to do in this essay is basically apply the skills of argumentation to analyzing a written text. So, in this case, you're going to be reading several different short stories, and you're going to write an argument or an analysis around one of those texts. This is something you've probably done in high school, writing about, say, Shakespeare or Of Mice and Men or something like that. So you're basically doing something similar to that. You're taking your skills that you've learned and analyzing a short story of your choosing from this unit. So you're going to develop a written argument or an analysis over one of the short stories read in this unit. So that's either Hills Like White Elephants, Yellow Wallpaper, Cask of Amontillado, or Everyday Use. You're going to contextualize that by using specific literary terminology that you've learned from the lectures. So things like characterization, setting, conflict, etc. You're going to create a thesis around that one of those literary foci. So basically, you're going to choose one of those as your central argument, your central thing that you want to talk about, and include main ideas that are supported by evidence, in this case, quotes from the text. So what you're going to do, there's some things you want to think about. What's the primary element you want to focus on? So I wouldn't try to cover 10 different things in a very short essay. You want to pick kind of one primary thing to talk about. So that could be the setting. Why is the setting important? You could talk about conflict. That's man versus man, man versus society, man versus self. You could talk about characterization. Are they flat? Are they round? Are they dynamic? Why? And then from there, you can think about the secondary elements that you want to talk about that kind of support that. So, for example, if I was going to say choose Hills Like White Elephants, my main topic might be the importance of certain symbols in Hills Like White Elephants to convey the degradation of this relationship, right? And so my first main idea might be around the symbol of the hills themselves, representing the pregnancy, or the idea of the elephant in the room, right? The abortion. My second symbol that I want to talk about might be related to the setting. It might be the crossroads of the train tracks that they're in this small, train station. And then my third symbol might be, I don't know, something else. The function of the alcohol in this story and why that's important. So that's kind of how I might put all of my focus on kind of one central idea. I've had other students write things like the function of irony within, say, the Cask of Amontillado, and they did 3 different types of irony as their 3 main ideas: situational, verbal, and dramatic. You could talk about characterizations. You could talk about how one character is round and dynamic and develops across the story. Your second main idea could be around the conflict between 2 characters. It could be man versus man, something like that. And your third main idea could be, I don't know, something to do with imagery related to characterization, something like that. So think about kind of what's the central thing that's interesting to you about that text that you want to talk about. You can also think about the literary theories that you could apply to this analysis. That's another way of kind of coming at this. So you could talk about Hills Like White Elephants from a feminist study standpoint. You could talk about the Cask of Amontillado from a new historicism standpoint, or everyday use, something like that. Think about the argument that you're trying to make about that element. So when you're analyzing a text, you're not just saying the author uses symbolism. You're saying that the author uses certain symbols for certain reasons, and that in itself is an argument that you're making. You're trying to say that it's the author, we should read that text as that symbol representing the crossroads in their relationships. That train track and Hills Like White Elephants represents the crossroads in their relationships. That's an argument that you're making. So you're thinking about, why is the author using that as a symbol rather than just saying, this character and this character were at a crossroads in their relationship. Why do they use that symbol? So for example, in something like Hills Like White Elephants, why does he use dialogue? For example, Hemingway, why does he use dialogue to dance around the issue of abortion without ever actually saying the words abortion? You might think about something like the historical context or the biographical context. So we're talking about a post-war Americans in a expat experience living in Spain or living in Europe. And in polite society at this time, abortion is not openly talked about, right? So um, that may be one reason why he chooses to use a symbol or a dialogue around the topic rather than actually stating it outright. Or, for example, in everyday use, why does Mama choose, say, a quilt to represent this idea of everyday usefulness versus the intellectual pseudo intellectualism of D? Um, so think about what it is that the author's trying to do with that literary element, that thing that you're talking about. And then what other elements do they use to achieve that goal? I kind of talked about that already. So you can also think, like I said, about how the author's background influences that meaning that's found in the work. So, for example, in The Yellow Wallpaper, Gilman herself underwent the rest cure, and it was obviously, devastating for her psyche, and that's why she wrote The Yellow Wallpaper, to convey the damage that this does to women, but also to talk about patriarchal relationships, marriage construct, things like that. And then what critique can you make about this text in a scholarly manner? So think about things that you can, because again, critique does not necessarily mean negative, right? So what's kind of the scholarship that you can bring to this from your own viewpoint? So you need to have two sources in your work. One of these has to be a scholarly source from the library database. This is required by the college. Make sure that you cite them correctly in text. Make sure you include them on a bibliography. In this case, your essay, your evidence in your essay is going to be quotes from the text that show your audience what you're talking about. So, for example, if I'm talking about how the dialogue shows that I think her name is Jin, is getting more and more upset throughout the text and is creating this man versus man conflict between the two characters, I'm going to pull out quotes from the dialogue that show the audience when she's getting upset. For example, when she says, stop it, please stop it. When she says, I can't take this anymore, or stop talking, I think is what she says. That's a quote that shows the audience what I'm talking about. So that's my evidence. Same thing in, for example, the Cask of Amontillado. If I want to talk about dramatic irony or foreshadowing, I will pull out a quote that shows that to the audience that's from the text. So you want to make sure you have two sets of quotes throughout your argument as your evidence. Quotes from the stories and then quotes from the source material, the sources that you're using, these outside research sources, quotes from them that show your audience these things. So in the library database, you should be looking for articles related to these texts or related to the literary elements that you're talking about within these texts, and then pull out quotes from those sources that show or prove whatever your argument is. So, for example, if you're talking about the Cask of Amontillado and the, the symbolism or the motif of the word Amontillado, find a source that talks about that, and then pull that into your essay as part of your evidence. So that's kind of what I just said right here. Make sure you're using quotes from the texts and from your sources to support your analysis. These are words, phrases, or passages from these source materials, both the text and the secondary sources, to support your claims. And then you expand on that in your own words with your own analysis. So that's how you kind of round out each of your main ideas. Your essay needs to be 2.5 to 3.5 pages in length and is due by Sunday, July 30th at 11:59 p.m. This is right before your finals week, so there are no extensions allowed, nothing like that. This is the final date. Minimum page length has to be met, proper MLA formatting is required, and then a bibliography is required as well. It should have the text, a citation for the text that you're reanalyzing, as well as at least 2 research sources. So you will be doing an outline for this. That will be completed as a separate assignment. That's going to be part of your final essay grade, and then the final draft itself will be the rest of your essay grade. You're going to be evaluated on making sure you have good, close analysis of the work and its major concepts, good concrete evidence to support your claims, both from the primary and the secondary sources, proper number of research sources, proper page length MLA formatting and citations, a fully developed essay structure, and good, clear organization of your ideas. So just give you guys a few helpful ideas as you start thinking about what it is that you want to write about, because there's a lot that you could touch on a lot of these all of these stories. So I want you to make sure you think about what you're really interested in talking about for 2.5 to 3.5 pages. So could be things like characterization, could be things where you talk about archetypes or protagonists, antagonists, major, secondary, their development as well. Are they static? Are they round? Are they flat? You could talk about literary devices like similes, metaphors, personifications, foreshadowing, flashbacks, irony. You could also talk about the structure, so you could look at the dramatic arc, you could look at the rising action, the climax, the falling action, etc. You could look at the conflict, like I said, so it could be man versus man versus society, that kind of thing. Could be the point of view of the narrator. So is this first person, is it third person omniscient? Why does that matter? You could also think about literary concepts, so things like themes, symbols, motifs, allusions, style. You could also talk about kind of secondarily the historical context. So I would not recommend that this be your main points. You need to make sure you're analyzing the text as a piece of literature, most importantly. So don't let this become a biography essay, don't let it become a history essay. But secondarily, you can think about things like the author's background, the historical events surrounding the text. Why do those matter? How are they portrayed in the text or influence the text? That kind of thing. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. This one does not have to be approved by me, but again, you'll be doing an outline, so I'll be giving you guys some feedback on that. So again, choose the story that's of most interest to you, and then within that, choose the literary elements that are of most interest to you that you want to talk about. Thank you.